Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast, this bonus episode. I am your boy 12 Kyle. Thank you for tapping in. I appreciate it. Man, check this out. Listen, I understand as a married man of, at the time of this recording, 24 years, that people get married and sometimes it just doesn't work, right? And sometimes you have to go your separate ways in divorce. And while nobody sets out to have a divorce, divorces happen. We know that, and we've all heard the statistics that over 50% of marriages now end in divorce. But the thing is that when a divorce happens, normally people go their separate ways. Now, particularly if there are no kids involved, or no shared assets, then you really can go your separate ways. But some people, take it upon themselves to badger their exes on end. I happen to be scrolling today on the interwebs, and I found an article that was just interestingly petty. And it's about a couple who had a divorce, and the ex-wife just was constantly nagging and bothering her ex-husband. Now, she and her ex-husband don't have any kids and didn't have any shared assets, so he decided to be petty just so she would leave him alone. And after I read this story, I was like, I gotta bring this to the podcast because this is hilariously petty. And the story goes as follows. And it's titled "Getting Back at My Ex-Wife." It said, "My ex and I married young. I was totally devoted to her. And to be fair, she had a lot of love to give. The only problem was she gave it to anyone, usually while I was away at work. She wasn't happy being with a broke college student and decided to bang her way into another relationship that could provide her more money. I came home early to find a dude old enough to be her father spooning her his soft-served diabetic dick into my wife. Damn. I went to see a lawyer the next morning. We got divorced less than a year after we married. I naively thought that this would be the end of our interactions. We didn't have any kids or any assets to fight over, so we had no reason to see each other. Except she would not go away. Over the next few years, she made my life miserable. My career took off, and I started a small freight company. I wasn't rich by any means, but the little bit of money I was making, and the ex felt entitled to get a cut of our brief union. She would contact me at random times, threatening me with lawsuits, and would say if I didn't, quote unquote, give her what she was owed, as she put it, she would threaten me. That's not how divorce works, of course, but she figured she could harass me into a payout to make her go away. I ignored her posts. I ignored her threats. I ignored her social media meltdowns, and they eventually dwindled down to occasionally her driving past my house on holidays when she was in town to visit her parents. A few more years go by. The loser that she cheated on with the loser she cheated with is long gone from a heart attack, leaving her to raise their kid alone. That was a bit of extreme measure to get away from her, but I understand, dude. Damn, this cold. She moves away to the other side of the state, and that could have been the end of it. But she decided to thumb her nose at me one last time. I learned through a friend of a friend that her kid is going to start Little League in the next season. I'm a big supporter of youth sports. So I contact the league and say, and asked, can I sponsor a team in her community via my company, which happens to include my first and last name in the title. The idea was that her team would have to play my team once or twice that season, and she'd have to sit in the stands and with nothing to do except be pissy about it. But by some stroke of good fortune, I even got more than I hoped for. You see, the players are drafted to teams at random. And guess who got assigned to the team that I sponsored? That's right, her kid. Every game, every post-win pizza party, every time she washed her kid's gear, she was surrounded by a sea of uniforms with, quote unquote, OP transportation emblazoned on the front in big letters. That was a good summer. End of story. That's petty as hell. I don't really know if you could get more pettier than that, but I will say this, can you blame him? I mean, if we go our separate ways and we don't have any kids, we don't have any shared assets. I was a broke college student when we met and I didn't really have anything. His career didn't start taking off until she left. So she's not entitled or she's not owed anything from him. And, why not just leave him alone? It was your cheating that.
Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul Podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shaped the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast and enjoy the vibes.
If you want a podcast where culture, conversation, and life collide, where you get insightful commentary, engaging discussions, and a fresh perspective on everything, then you need to listen to the 12 Kyle podcast. Hosted by the one and only, yours truly, 12 Kyle, a voice that you know and trust. This podcast will bring you thought-provoking moments, compelling stories, and a whole lot of fun. Whether you're a first-time listener or just tuning in, each episode promises to be something new and exciting. So sit back, relax, join 12 Kyle, myself, and my guests as we break down the world around us and give you stories that you've never heard before, from nostalgic throwbacks to everything in between. The 12 Kyle podcast is a front row seat to this conversation. Subscribe now and never miss an episode of the 12 Kyle podcast, where the vibe is always real and the discussion is always worth your time. Led to your divorce, so be done with it. You moved on, you had a kid, everything, but you wouldn't let the man just be in peace. I thought that story was interesting. I can only assume that it's true. But as the kids say, he got his lick back. Revenge is even in its most petty form, it still makes for a good story. And he got his revenge. And I don't think most of us are down with being spiteful, but at the same time, when you go through a marriage and the marriage ends, I don't think most people wish ill things toward the other person, their ex. Most people. Now there are some who, wouldn't mind seeing their ex drive off a cliff. and he did say that, the guy she cheated with had a heart attack. So he figured he was trying to get out of here too. I mean, that was an extreme cold joke, but it was cold. Got to give him his props. But at the end of the day, I don't think most people have that kind of hate, if you will, for their exes. Now, there are some. I'm not going to sit here and say that there aren't. And it's always an interesting dynamic because, I have close friends who have gone through divorces. And, I've been there for their stories. And in a lot of ways, it felt like I was going through the divorce too, even though I wasn't. But I mean, like, I was there. So I was right there, like in the field with him, in the struggle. And, you don't ever want to see your homies down, but at the same time, to see them fall and then rise back up, like the kings that they are, is a beautiful thing. The downtime and the downtime ain't long, relatively speaking. And I don't know what their darkest moments were like, but I will tell you this, having been through it with them, it's good to see them where they are, thriving, because everybody around me is thriving. But even in saying that, like, I remember a conversation I had with one of the homies. I was like, I mentioned something about, his ex and a post that I saw on social media. And he was like, oh, he said, okay, like that. And I was like, well, you know what, man, I've been thinking about it. I said, I hadn't really thought about it until I saw the post. I was like, but I'm going to delete her. And he was like, why? I was like, because y'all ain't married. And he was like, but you're friends with her on social media. I was like, we ain't friends. I was like, we only friends because of you. Like, and y'all ain't together no more. So, she divorced you, then what are we going to talk about? And it's no disrespect, because if I saw her in the street, I say, what's up? I would never be disrespectful. But at the same time, if you and my boy ain't together, I mean, listen, and for as long as I've been with Sharice, if we got divorced, I wouldn't expect I wouldn't expect my friends to be friends with her. No, I mean, because those are my friends, and same for vice versa for her friends. Now I will say this much, like, we do have some mutual friends that are, like, I think she would still be friends with, but no, like, my partners, no, I wouldn't. Now, the only thing I would ask is just be respectful, and I think she'd be respectful and they'd be respectful. But no, I'm not. If my best friend and his wife are divorced, there's nothing for me to talk to her about. If I see in the street, what up? Yerp, what's up? That's it. That's all I got for you. I got a yerp and what's up, and that's it. I don't have anything else. But I'm not that level of petty, and the people that I know and friends that I have who've gone through divorce, they're not that level of petty. But I will say this is a brilliant level of petty. So hopefully, for those of you who may be going through a divorce, or maybe some of you who may experience something like this, hopefully you took notes, because this is a really nice story to follow. That's going to do it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for checking out this bonus edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We drop new episodes every Thursday at midnight. And from time to time, we drop bonus episodes just like this one on Sundays at midnight. If you haven't done so already, subscribe. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We're handing them out for free. We're also on YouTube. Thank you for watching. For those of you who watch on YouTube, share it. Pass the word. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Download and subscribe there as well. Leave comments. I love reading the comments on YouTube. We're also on social media. Hit us up. Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and TikTok. 12 Kyle and 12 Kyle podcast. If you feel like contributing, we would love for you to contribute financially. Hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. And if you're into merch, we got merch, 12 Kyle podcast merch. Just click the link in the description box and it says merch. You can buy 12 Kyle podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. We got it for the low. And we also have a new baby. It's called the Rap Soul Podcast. It is a music podcast. It is where we have discussions about artists from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s when it comes to soul, hip hop, R&B, all of that encompassed into one music podcast. It is the best music podcast that you've never heard. So check it out and let me know what you think. Those podcast episodes drop every Monday at midnight. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Once again, this is your boy 12 Kyle talking about Payback as a grandmother. Again, this is the 12 Kyle podcast. I'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's. Cheers.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.